The Choose Love movement offers no-cost solutions that keep our kids safe, providing them with the skills and tools they need to flourish. Join us in our mission to create the world we want to live in, one that's connected and compassionate. Check us out at chooselovemovement.org. Together, we can choose love.
Hi, my name is Scarlett Lewis, and I am the founder of the Jessie Lewis Choose Love movement. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Choose Love podcast. Today, I am interviewing John Romano, who perpetrated a school shooting 20 years ago in his high school in New York. He was 16 years old at the time. He shot at a few of his classmates and hit one of his teachers in the leg. He pled guilty and spent the next 17 years in federal prison. He's out now and shared his story on the Choose Love podcast in hopes that it will shed some light on how and why school shootings happen and how to prevent them. I ask when you listen to keep your heart open to his story and what he has to say. I believe people can make mistakes, horrific ones, and be rehabilitated and come back to their true essence, which is, of course, love. I say this with some credibility because I've worked for years in prisons and have met many men and women who have done horrific things that have been transformed by choosing love. I believe that John wants to be part of the solution. I think a powerful way of doing this is to share his story so that we can understand the pain beneath these devastating tragedies. I've spoken to other school shooters as well because I want to ask the questions I didn't get to ask the man who murdered Jessie. What happened that caused you to do this? What needs weren't met? What could have been done that would have kept you from committing these atrocities? The answers are usually very similar, and it has to do with being seen. You'll hear that in this podcast as well. Don't discount the importance of this. As humans, we are desperate for validation and to be noticed. This is becoming more difficult with our addiction to cell phones and the disconnection it creates. I hope the takeaway for you is to think differently when you read about the next school shooting, to pause in the choice moment and get curious about the point of pain that started the downward trajectory in their lives. And I hope you can thoughtfully respond with love by doing a positive action to be part of the solution. This can look like having the courage to step outside of your own busyness, distraction, or even pain to help someone, and forgiving those who've hurt you, to free yourself from pain and helping others do the same. Making sure your kids' school has Choose Love so they can learn the essential life skills that enable us to manage adversity and grow from it. I believe in forgiveness. John did the prison time and he's wanting to help now. I think his story can do this. Thanks for listening. And as always, thank you for choosing love.
Hi, Scarlett.
Hey, John, how are you?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you?
Good. I'm good. I've just been
I love.
running all over the place, busy with Choose Love.
Well, that's a good thing. I know it can be overwhelming at some times, but I'm sure you're doing well. I love the background, by the way. That's new, I think, right?
Oh, I don't know. Is it? Maybe I didn't have it on last time. I can't remember. I usually have it up.
Maybe I just didn't notice. It sticks out to me today. I love it. So
yeah. Thank you. Always
yeah.
spreading the message of love.
It's a very powerful message, and yet again, I would love to commend you for your path and your journey and everything that you've been doing. It's amazing and it's inspiring.
Thank you, John. I really appreciate that. I'm looking forward to doing our second edition of the John Romano podcast here today on Choose Love. And so why don't we just start? You want to start?
Yeah, let's go for it.
Awesome. All right. Welcome everybody back to the Choose Love podcast. I am here with John Romano again because we had so much to talk about that we thought we need to do another episode, and we have a lot to talk about this time. So, John, if you could just, I don't know if it's better for you to recap or for me to recap the first podcast. But I'm continuing on personally in my search for the truth, the search for the source of pain that could lead someone to want to harm themselves and other people. Usually homicidal ideation starts with suicidal ideation. And I'm talking with John because a few decades ago, you actually broke into your high school and with a gun, with the intention of killing yourself, is what you've said. And that turned into what, unfortunately became a school shooting, technically. And you went to trial, you went to prison for a long time, and now you're out and wanting to be part of the solution, wanting to talk to people about what happened, wanting to explain yourself, not excuse yourself, but explain why. And that is exactly why I wanted to host you on this podcast, John, because I want to have those conversations. I know that you made a huge mistake, and I've made huge mistakes too. You went to prison and you paid for that mistake. You're out now and you want to make the world a better place. And I really appreciate that. I mean, we learn as human beings from our mistakes. I know I've learned from mine, and I believe that you have learned from yours. You've thought about it, you've turned your life around. And in fact, when you got out, and if you want to hear more in more detail about what happened, you can listen to the first podcast. But I really wanted to pick up this one with where we left off, which was you getting out of prison, you coming back home, and then we were going to talk about what happened after that. So do you want to start there, John?
Yeah. And yet again, thank you for having me on. And you saying that you want to get to the core, right? And to have that difficult conversation, which it is a very difficult conversation. And coming from your standpoint, I can't believe it. It's amazing that you're doing it and willing to talk to me. So thank you. So yeah, I had spent almost 17 years in prison, and when I came home, I had different jobs. I was very lucky to be able to find work, but I ended up going down the path of trying to help those in the community who needed it most. And I was working at a homeless shelter, and I was running a clothing pantry, and I was able to interact with people every day. And I loved it because that job saved me in a way, even though it would later almost kill me. That job saved me because I had a sense of meaning and purpose where I believed that I was a good person, that I was somebody who had done something horrible, but that didn't mean that I was forever a horrible person, right? That I could still be somebody of positive value to those around me and the community. So, yeah, I was working at this homeless shelter for a while, and
Actually,
unfor-
before we go there, could we just
Mhm.
go back just a little bit? Because I want
Yeah,
the people listening may not go back and listen to the first podcast, and I
right.
just want to hear from you one more time. I know that you were obviously without hope. Anybody who is going to bring a gun into their school, even with the intention of killing themselves, is hopeless.
Right.
And so
Yeah.
that's what you were feeling. And then, you say that you did not mean you meant to shoot the gun up in the air, but people thought that you were shooting at them. There was a skirmish. You went to prison, but in prison, so you're angry, you are victimized, you feel as you go into prison. But what is the path in prison that helped you turn it around, turn it from this angry person with so much pain? And if you want to talk about the source of that pain, that would be interesting. And then how did you go from school shooter into
Mhm.
somebody that would work at a homeless shelter, that liked that kind of work because it made them feel good about themselves, that didn't want to be defined in that way? Can you just explain that a little bit?
Yeah. So during my time in prison, unfortunately, the Department of Corrections isn't really set up to help people turn their lives around. But there are organizations that are outside of the prisons that reach in and help individuals. And I'm also very blessed to have my family and friends who stuck by my side. And I would also
And
like to just,
Choose Love is one of those organizations, by the way. We have a very powerful prison program.
oh, wow, I didn't know
Yeah.
that. That's amazing.
Yes.
Um, wow. So yeah, I would also like to mention, I don't know if you've heard of these books, but two books really helped me out a lot. The first one is called Houses of Healing by Robin Kasarjian. And this is a book that is written specifically for those who are incarcerated, and it helps people get in touch with the trauma that they may have endured, and then also process the trauma that they have made, caused other people as well. Because a lot of people who've been incarcerated, who have lashed out and hurt others, have also been first hurt themselves. So it was very important for me to read that book and to be able to kind of get in touch with the hurt that I had experienced. I'd been sexually abused as a small child, which, had been a source of pain. And again, I loved how you said that, we're not making excuses for what I did. We are just kind of putting the pieces of the puzzle together so that people can have an understanding of what led me to be in a disturbed mindset. Um, so again, there's no justification, but for me to really deal with that trauma from a young 5, 6, 7-year-old who was being horribly abused, and then also dealing with the pathway to violence, which, the pain and the frustration kind of first goes inward. Like you said, suicidal ideation is first and foremost in my mind, where as a teenager, even though I had reached out for help, I began to feel hopeless. Again, that key word that you had mentioned. And the hopelessness for me, it began to also turn into anger, because it was, well, I've asked for help, I've reached out, I've interacted with some of my school officials who wanted to ignore me and brush me off. And so that turned into the anger and the frustration. And now it's just that. Now it's not just me wanting to hurt myself, but I also want to make sure that others feel my pain, that others can no longer ignore me. And so that's what led me down that path to go into my school that day, where I wanted to die and I also wanted to spread that pain to others. And so with that, dealing with that while I was in prison and with this book as a guide, it was really eye-opening, especially when I was able to. It's very rare, but when you're in prison and you're able to get around other people who are willing to be open and vulnerable, I mean, that's hard to come by even out here in society, especially for men, where we try to be, tough and strong, and vulnerability is a sign of weakness, when in reality it can be a sign of strength. So when I saw somebody else who was willing to open themselves up and be vulnerable, talking about this, the same things that I've been reading in this book, it really empowered me to start to open up myself first, to really process it within my own mind, but also to talk about it with my family and to share with them these horrible things that they didn't know had been going on. Um, and yeah, that really led to a strong sense of healing. And then I would like to mention there was another. Sorry,
It
go
takes,
ahead.
it actually takes a lot of courage to face pain that you have instead of resisting, avoiding, or numbing yourself. It takes a lot of courage. And I just wanted to say, I found a quote in an article that you had said in one of
Mhm.
your talks. my goal that day was to go in there and die in front of people so that they would also be in pain, so that they would also be struggling, just like I felt I was. And that you basically said you wanted to be seen. You didn't felt seen, you didn't feel heard, and you thought that this was the only way that that was going to happen. Is that right?
Yeah. So again, this is the disturbed mindset I was in. Obviously, most teenagers feel unseen and unheard to a certain degree. Um, and unfortunately, I just took it upon myself to force myself to be traumatizing everybody else the way that I did, and so yeah, so that was the thing, and that's why I also tell people that I've learned through my own healing process is when we talk about how hurt people, there's the other side of that, which is healed people heal people. So those of us who have been through the darkness, whether it's somebody who maybe just struggles with depression or anxiety or any other brain disorder, or situation in life, you've been through those hard times. Now you can help others through their hard times. And that's what I'm trying to do today. And when I speak out, it's again not trying to justify what I did, but it's to give a little bit of understanding to people so that one, those who may be in that dark place right now can understand that one, you're not alone. And two, there is a way out that does not include violence, whether towards yourself or towards others. I want people to know that you can have a good life. You can find those who are willing to help you. You can connect with them, and you can have the good life that you want and you deserve. And on the other side of that, I also want people who maybe you haven't been struggling, maybe you haven't been through a really dark depression and you don't understand it, but you want to, or you're somebody who's in a position of power where you're a teacher or even a parent or law enforcement counselor. You want to be able to better connect with somebody who is on that dark path. So here I am. I know it sounds very, just irrational, because that's what it is. But I'm trying to give to you the thought process that was going on within my mind when I was a teenager, so that we can make those changes and help those people who need it so that nobody does anything like what I did.
It's interesting because we're trying to do the same thing.
Mhm.
I believe that the reason we're here as humans, the reason that we have all these difficult experiences is so that we can learn from them and then take that wisdom from that learned experience, both good and bad, the experiences themselves, and use it to help other people. So this is why I am on this podcast and I invited you, because I think that you have a lot to teach us, obviously, that we haven't learned and we haven't dealt with, because on the top of every parent's mind is the safety, health, and well-being of their child. And so I think that you have a lot to teach us. And I really appreciate you, because I know it takes courage to come on here and to speak out and to say that. Now, with that being said, I think that we notice that your hand, as you use your hands, and you had showed us at the ending of the last podcast that you have braces on your hands.
Mhm.
And so do you want to just continue your story and then add, what's happened? You said that the job at the homeless shelter, it saved you, even though it almost killed you. That was kind of an
Right.
statement. So I know everybody's wondering what you mean by that.
Yeah. So, um, as I was working there for a while and interacting with those who need help the most, but they're also usually dealing with their own mental health struggles. And yeah, so one day, August 29th, 2022, while I was at work, an individual came in, and he was, coming in looking for lunch because we were a daytime service. And I happened to be down in the cafeteria area, just kind of helping out. And he got into a little bit of an argument with one of my coworkers. Um, Long story short, I don't want to go into too much detail, but we needed to ask him to leave. And I was the one to ask him to leave. And we did not have security. We did not have metal detectors. We did not search people's property. And, none of us could have expected that he had swords, some small swords in his locker that we had available for people. And yeah, so he ended up coming out and attacking me. And I ran, and then when I could no longer run because he had caught up to me and knocked me down on some stairs. Thankfully, I had the higher ground, and I was able to kick and fight for my life, literally. But he practically cut off my right leg from the knee down. He practically cut off my left foot. And then later on, he would manage to get up and start swinging for my head as I was lying on the stairs. And I held up my arms to protect me. And that's when I almost lost my hands. But somehow, miraculously, I still survived. I don't know how, I don't know why. Um, but here I am. I'm still alive.
Yeah.
Yeah, now I'm on this whole other chapter of my life saying, you know what, maybe I'm alive for a reason. Uh,
You are alive for a reason.
yeah, so I got to make the best of it. I got to interact with people like you. I have to help out the most that I can because I could have died that day.
Yeah.
And so it is, I don't know, if you, on a spiritual level, why am I alive? I don't know, but I'm going to make the best of it. And I'm going to do what I can to speak up and to help and to share this unfortunate perspective that I have. But I also have to continue to work on my healing yet again, now on another, such a different wavelength, where now I've become the victim of a horribly senseless, violent crime. This individual did not know about me or my past. He didn't know my name. It wasn't even he and I who got into an argument. The individual who he had gotten into an argument was more like behind the counter, where they were serving lunch. So I guess he just kind of latched onto me, targeted me, seen me as the person that he hated the most, and was blaming me for everything. And yeah,
Well,
so
you were the one
now
that was asking him to leave, right?
yeah, I mean, my other coworkers were there, basically telling him the same thing. But yeah, so
So
now
it's,
I'm healing from that.
yeah,
And
it's really interesting, John, though, how you chose to respond to that attack,
yeah,
because two ways that we can respond when
right.
someone attacks us, and you chose one way, and I want to know what you chose and why.
I mean, I'll use what you say. I chose love. I chose to forgive him. Um, and even when the police came and spoke to me, they didn't even ask a statement from me. There were so many witnesses and security footage and everything, and he admitted to everything. But when I spoke with the DA later on, I told the DA I was against him getting a life sentence. He was facing 25 to life. And I was against that. I did not want him to be locked away forever. Sure, he tried to end my life, but he didn't succeed. And I'm still living a good life. It's a different life, but it's a good life. And I want him to be able to have the opportunity, and I want to hopefully call for more resources in the prison system, more organizations in the prison system like yours, you just mentioned that, to be able to help him and turn his life around. And the forgiveness aspect is Forgiveness is not saying that what he did was okay, or that it wasn't a horrible thing, or that he shouldn't be held accountable. Me forgiving him is me being able to say, you know what? I'm not going to hold on to the anger anymore. It's burned its natural course, and I don't want to add fuel to the fire anymore. I'm going to let it go. And, it's time for me to move on with my life. Yeah, my life will be, like I said, different, but I'm not going to be mad at him anymore. I'm going to wish him well, which I was able to do in court when he was sentenced. He eventually, he was offered. First, they were trying to get him to plead guilty to 20 to life, and that's when I told them, I said, no, I don't want him to have that life sentence on the back. So they offered him a 25-year sentence, where he won't have to see parole. He'll just simply do his time and go home. He has the opportunity to go home after 21 years, as it is in New York State. You do 85% of your sentence. But anyways, I say that to say that when in court, I said that to him. I forgive you. I hope that you're able to find those in prison that I was able to find in prison who are on the right path, who are trying to do the right thing and turn their lives around. And I wish you well. And I believe that, maybe that'll help him. Maybe that'll be, fuel for him to turn his life around. But at the end of the day, it was a way for me to say, I'm I'm moving forward with my life. And I'm not going to allow anger to, be it's not going to be the fuel that I run on anymore. I'm going to run on, choosing love, I guess.
That's amazing that you did that. I think anybody that's listening now, even if they are listening with some amount of reservation to what you're saying, I mean, that would be hard for anyone to do, to forgive somebody who caused them to be disabled for the rest of their life. And we can see that in your hands.
Yeah.
And I don't know, what the disability is with your legs or your feet, but that's a hard way to live. And that is really beautiful. Do you think that your experience in school and the whole incident with the gun, do you think that helped you come to the conclusion that forgiveness was the way to go?
Yeah, because of the fact that I went through such an extreme where I was forced to have to look at very deep within myself and recognize the darkness within myself, the struggles within myself, but also I had to deal with all of the pain that I had from different sources of my life. And I worked on that, like we spoke on, before the attack ever happened. So when the attack happened, I already had those capabilities within me to forgive, to put myself into somebody else's shoes and to see that you hate the action and not the actor, right? That you believe that everybody is capable of, or everybody should be given the opportunity to have resources to turn their lives around. And I believe that for him, I believe that for others. And I say that with the reservation of, I do believe that there are some people that deserve to be in prison for the rest of their lives. But even those people who deserve to be in prison for the rest of their lives, they deserve those same opportunities to turn their life around and to live a good life. Even if it is in prison, they deserve to find that peace of mind, that find that sense of healing within, and that they may be able to talk with others, reach out with others, and hopefully heal others before other people go down the same path that they did. So if somebody deserves to spend the rest of their lives in prison, so be it, but allow them to have that opportunity to turn their life around, to help themselves, to help other people, because as we speak of, those who have been through that darkness can help others when they're in that dark place. And so many people who have been incarcerated or currently are incarcerated can be sources of healing for many people.
Absolutely. And I want you to know that we have a program within the prison system that does that. So
Yeah.
one,
Uh,
we have um, lifers, so people who are in for life, actually teaching
mhm.
teaching the Choose Love formula, which is courage, gratitude, forgiveness, compassion in action, teaching that to inmates so that when the inmates get out, they have these essential life skills. They know how to have healthy relationships and how to manage their emotions and how to make responsible decisions, all the things that we have to learn as humans, and then we have to practice for the rest of our lives. They are learning them, and they are doing good things with them from behind bars, because they will not get out, but they have found a purpose
Mhm.
through love and helping other people.
That's amazing, and, I hope that you're able to spread that to other states, and to turn those prison systems around where you're introducing this new program that is lacking in many places. I can tell you here in New York State, there are some, programs, but I don't think anything on that level, on that sense of depth, and, I would love to talk with you in the future if we can work together on making that a reality in the New York State prison system.
Yeah, let's definitely do that. Um, I was thinking, I doing a little bit of online research before we had our first podcast. I
Mhm.
was watching some of your social media,
Yeah,
and you have, at that time, I think I just came on the scene at the time when you had a lot of pushback from people.
yeah,
And I was shocked that there was so much anger that you were even on social media, even, and your message has been, I just want to help. I just want people to understand so that we can prevent this in the future. But even that, they thought you don't have the right to share your message and you don't have a right to be here, even though you had done your time and you'd paid for what happened. And it was interesting to me, and I really thought about that, because getting back to the concept of forgiveness, people make mistakes, and people make huge mistakes, and I think that we need to recognize that it's what people do that is evil, that is monstrous, but it is not who they are. And
right,
that's something that I have really thought about a lot as I have gone out and spoken to school shooters.
yeah,
I have to, and I say, and I tell people, they weren't born that way. They
right,
were not born that way. So we need to get curious and ask what happened between when they were born and they did that evil, monstrous thing. What happened? And of course, we know that it's some point of pain. We need to start getting curious, and we need to address the pain so that we can come to a solution. And unless we do that, we're not going to solve this issue. And that's been my message for the last 10 years. And we haven't solved it because I think we want to blame. We want to think that you're the actual problem. And then I think, then we're not responsible for it at all. And I'm not, you are responsible for what you did. It was wrong, but there is a problem in us being able to help you manage the pain that you were in from the abuse that you underwent. And
yeah.
you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I would like to say that I think for a lot of people, first with the social media thing, is people believe that I may still be a threat to the community, whether they believe that I may still be violent or that I might influence others to be violent. And I've always done my best when I spread my message is, you know, I'm not glorifying what I did. I'm not trying to present myself in this cool way or anything for what I did. No, I'm trying to say what I did was horrible. And here are the things that I want people to know. And I want the kids who may be watching and who may be influenced by me to not think what I did was cool and that I'm got, any type of social media influence because of the shooting. No, people respond to me on social media because I talk about healing. I talk about forgiveness. I talk about what we can do to help one another. And I understand that a lot of people, they don't care. They don't want to respond to that. And I think that it's important that first, I haven't posted anything on social media in the past like 5, 6 weeks because I'm still reevaluating how much help am I providing to the community and how much pain. I've always known that I'd be hurting people and traumatizing some people, but I always thought that, the balance would weigh more in the help that I'm providing because I do have quite a large following. And I think that that's because a lot of people are connecting and a lot of people are getting some benefits from my message, from me sharing my story. But it's still very controversial, and I'm still trying to figure out what's the best way to move forward to help people as much as I can with causing as few problems as I can for other people. But I would love for us to talk about what's the solution, right? I think the solution is obviously early childhood intervention is best. And we both believe in the social emotional learning programming. And I think that if we can get that into more schools, if we can be having teachers able to have these discussions with students, whether it's, providing them with more tools, more understanding of what's going on within them, what's going on within those around them, how to help themselves, how to help other people. That is one of the biggest things that we can be doing, not just to prevent school shootings, but to prevent suicides, to prevent addiction, to prevent all those people, because the vast majority of people who suffer from some type of mental health issue, they suffer in silence and they never lash out and hurt other people. And I think that it's important that we focus on that and we get that into the school systems. And then hopefully we can even be presenting the same information for adults and helping adults. But I think obviously the best, the most influential thing we can be doing is that early childhood intervention, kindergarten through 12th grade. I believe every year some type of age appropriate social emotional learning program should be there. And I believe, and I've made videos and talked about it, because teachers ask me, how can I help? What can I do? Well, listen, if you're an English teacher or a history teacher, when you're sharing a story with your students, make sure not just ask them what happened or why did it happen, go more deep. What were the emotions that the characters were feeling? Or in history class, if you're talking about current events or history, what were the emotions going on? What were maybe some of the red flags that popped up if somebody did something wrong that others could have noticed or that the individual could have noticed within themselves? So in this way, you're teaching children empathy, and you're also teaching them how to recognize what's going on within them, how to recognize when they may need help, how to ask for help, and you're also teaching others how to accept when somebody asks for help. Because I think that's another key issue is that when people ask for help, sometimes there might not be resources, which we should be working more on. And sometimes people just don't know what to do. So I believe that that is one of the best things that we can be doing is integrating that into the educational programming, because yes, some people say that students should be learning that at home, that that's the family's job. Well, what happens when the family doesn't have those tools? They don't have that mindset. Their mental well-being might be a bit off. You're just going to end up promoting this generational I'm trying to think generational violence, generational pain and suffering, mental health issues just gets passed on without that intervention from outside. And so I think that's one of the best things that we can be doing, that could have helped me, you know, maybe I don't know, because I did go to therapy, but at the same time, there's the stigma that we need to be working on. Because even when I went to therapy, I was still afraid to open up all the way because I also knew that there was this stigma, and I didn't want people to look at me in a certain way. I didn't even want my therapist to look at me in a certain way, and that's really the main reason why I open up and talk about sexual abuse is not just to give people an understanding, because that doesn't really have, that's not the reason, excuse me, why I did what I did. But I hope to let others know it's okay to talk about it. If it happened to you, which 1 in 4 girls has experienced some type of sexual violence, 1 in 5 or 1 in 6 boys has experienced some type of sexual violence. I want you to know you're not alone. It's unfortunately a lot more common than you think, and that you can open up and talk about it with some people, and you can get the help, and you can still have a great life. No matter what happened to you, you can still have a great life.
Yeah, that's beautiful, John. And you know that we are totally aligned in that. I saw Jesse's chalkboard message of nurturing, healing, love. I thought, how do I elevate that in schools? And found social emotional learning. And so I've been advocating for that for the last 10 years. We have probably one of the most comprehensive social emotional learning programs, but we also include all this other great stuff. We synthesize the best of what was available, and we offer this to schools, homes, and communities at no cost, because I know this would have saved my son's life. And it's not therapy, it is essential life skills you need from very little, like you said, kindergarten. I say pre-K. We even have a prenatal program because we have to really safeguard brain development. And we know early on, your brain is mostly developed by the time that you're 5. We can change our brain wiring through neuroplasticity, but a lot of the brain development happens by the time kids are 5, and that is such an important time. So we've got this pre-K program that's filled with brain science, and it's wonderful. And I always tell teachers, when you're driving by a daycare, drop this off there, because those are the kids that are coming into your classrooms. Parents like me, I mean, I drop my young kids off at daycare every day before work and then pick them up there after work. They spend a long time at daycare, and I know that they didn't have something like this, and they could have benefited from it. So important, like number one important. And then and that's different. That is giving skills and tools for kids to be able to manage pain, to be able to manage their difficult feelings, to understand them, to move through them. This is what Choose Love teaches. And I always say adversity and trauma is not the same thing. Adversity is hardship and difficulty and pain, and we all face that as human beings, and that's there for a reason, to help us grow. But we have to understand that it's called post-traumatic growth, and our program is the only program that teaches kids about post-traumatic growth. It reduces the fear of difficult events that happen in your life, with the understanding that this is there to help you grow, so you have more curiosity than fear. Really, really important lessons that I wish that I knew, that I didn't know, so I wouldn't have been able to give to my kids. I learned myself through the Choose Love program. And so that's really important, as is, I know that our government now is really focusing on mental health, which is a great thing. I was just at a nationwide conference with someone from Washington, from the Department of Ed, who was talking about providing more mental health resources for schools, which is great. But even then, there are so few, and the need is so great. And so, both of what we're talking about has to be done, because we're in a crisis right now. So important, so important. Right now, through this podcast, the majority of our audience is educators and administrators, guidance counselors, and parents. They are the ones that are listening right now. So knowing that, John, I'm just wondering what you would tell them now with my experience, with my interviews with individuals who have committed these crimes. What I've been saying is that, I want to know, what could we have done? How did we fail you? What needs were left unmet because you weren't born this way? And I want to ask that question, but if I boil it down to one word, I've been saying it would be the word seen. That the guys that I've spoken to that have perpetrated these crimes do not feel seen. And I think that you alluded to that maybe in our previous conversation. But with that in mind, I'm wondering what you could say to our audience right now. What changes could they make in how they approach their kids? And really kind of what do you wish, John, had happened for you when you were growing up? I mean, obviously you would wish that the abuse didn't happen, but it did. So, and it does a lot for kids. Kids are struggling right now with a lot of things. So what kind of advice would you give the educators and the parents listening that you would have liked to have?
Yeah. So knowing that your audience is mostly a lot of those people, right? I would strongly, I want to speak mostly to the administrators, because I've spoken to so many teachers who have a good heart and want to do so much and battle with the administration. And I've spoken with some people from administration, and sometimes it's all about what differences can you make from that standpoint in the administration? What do you allow in your school system? And I think that first and foremost, when we talk about people not feeling seen, it's a thing of there are many avenues in which students can get help oftentimes, right? But if you're not making it known, if you're not making it easily accessible, and if some students are having problems with those pathways that you have to help, um, unfortunately, some people are going to give up easier than others. And they're going to give up.
Are you talking about administrators giving up?
Well, no, sorry, I'm talking about like students, so if the administrators, if you're not giving enough knowledge to everybody about the different, resources, the different things that are available to everybody, if you're not making those things easily accessible, if you're not managing them well, and also that goes for how the administration is interacting with teachers. People are going to give up. And when they give up, they feel hopeless. And when they feel hopeless, they are more likely to want to hurt themselves. And sometimes they're going to want to hurt others, because they're going to, as we spoke about, the anger is first inwards, and then for some people it goes outwards. And so for the administration to be making sure that you have whatever resources you have that are oftentimes limited, but you got to distribute them differently. You got to make sure that the teachers know everything that's available, because there's teachers who don't even know everything that's available within their own schools. And you have students especially that don't know everything that's available. But I think that
parents don't know, because I've been one of those parents.
Yes.
Has needed help and has not known a thing about what my rights were or the help that was available to me.
Yeah, so I'm thinking for administration, you got to be more open. Your communication has to be more open, but you also have to, if things are not working, you have to change them up. If you have limited resources, you have to mix things up. You have to reallocate where maybe some funds are going. And, if you have a lot of funds in some programs that are helping a bit, but you're lacking elsewhere, sometimes you got to put funds in places that people might not like it. You got to advocate for more counselors, for more mental health advocates. There are schools in America that have school resource officers, police officers, but they don't have counselors. So you're setting up a system for failure. You're setting it up where, hey, we don't have these people who can interact with you and help you out the most as a counselor, but we do have somebody who may arrest you if you mess up. What kind of uh, what kind of message is that sending to kids, and what kind of system is that for your finances, where you're opening it up to the police to come in but not for counselors to come in? um, so that's one of the things that always catches me is how many people, like I said, I talk to administrators too who struggle because they have people over them as well sometimes. You have to allow more openness, more communication, and honestly, more love. You have to allow the fact that if you're just a teacher and your administration isn't allowing you to really to be open with some things, they're limiting what you can and cannot teach, find a way around it. Find a way to connect with your students. Find a way to also open up yourself and share with your students the struggles that you or other adults have been through and made it through. Because that's another thing. I think we spoke about that before, but a lot of times as adults, it's important for us to open up to kids and to let them know the struggles that you may be going through. Yeah, they might be a little bit different in today's generation than 30 years ago, but you know what? A lot of us did things that we're not proud of, or a lot of us went through struggles. A lot of us were victimized or did something horrible, but we're able to get back on the right path and still able to have a good life. And there is hope for you. No matter what you're going through, no matter what you've experienced, no matter what you've done, there is hope for you. And you got to let your kids know that. You got to let your students know that. And the best way to do that isn't just by saying it like that, but by sharing stories. And that sometimes is the hard part of how do you share stories of like, yeah, I lived a crazy life, or somebody else lived a crazy life, but made it through. That can be very important. And I've known some of my friends who have kids, and that really connects. That really allows then the kids, the students, to then feel more comfortable also to open up to the parents, to the teacher, to whoever they're interacting with, because it's not a one-way street. You have to have a two-way street. You have to let them know that, yeah, here's some of my life experiences. Here's me opening up to you. And then that's when they're going to reciprocate sometimes, more often than not, and eventually open up to you and let you know that they may be going through something similar, or that they may be struggling, that they really don't feel so alone anymore, that they now feel seen, that they now feel heard, understood, and that they now can maybe see those pathways, to see those ways in which they can make their way life forward. And the people who they can connect with, the teachers, the administrators, or the parents who are open and connecting with the kids that way, those students will know that they can go to them when they're struggling, that those teachers, administrators, whoever, are the ones who, when the system might not be working for them, they can go to that adult, and that adult will do the best that they can to push the way forward.
Like one trusted adult.
One trusted adult can make a huge difference. And
you have that, John?
Listen, I did, but I'll tell you this. The reason why I say it is because I think as a teenage boy, with a single mother, when she tried to play the role model of father and mother, sometimes I didn't connect with her. Sometimes I was struggling with that idea of what is masculinity? What is it to be a man? And did I have any men that were in my life that I really looked up to? Kind of, but none that really that I connected with that really opened up with me in a huge way, in which I felt comfortable going to them with certain things.
Did you
And
have anyone at school?
no, there was, and that's the other thing too, is I think that there are some teachers that I really liked on a academic level, like, wow, like they really helped me when I struggle with this subject. They really helped me. But I think on a deeper emotional level, which might be too much to ask from our teachers, they're already getting burnt out from a lack of support and resources that they need. But for teachers to open up on an emotional level, which I also know, I'm sure that there's some boundaries that have to be established and you don't want to cross them, but we have to find some way in which they can be a more open role model, able to connect on a deeper level with their students. Um, because especially when you might not feel comfortable opening up to your parents, but you might feel more comfortable if it's a teacher who seems really open and who might not crack down on you for if you open up to them about something that you did or experienced or thought. Then yeah, that third party, that's outside of your family, that's outside of your home, that bystander is what the FBI calls them. The bystander can make a whole lot of difference. That can be the person who can not only be a source of comfort, but that can also be the person who sounds the alarm if things are really going down a very dark path.
Is there something you could point to that you could say, if I had that, if
Mhm.
they did this, I would not have done what I did? Is there something you can point to?
Yeah.
Some
I
need
mean,
that was unmet, that if it was met, you would not have done what you did.
yeah, I think that it was definitely, um, whether we're talking from the school standpoint or societal standpoint, I mean, I think it's really that male role model in my life that was not just there for me, because I did have like an uncle, or two that were really good, but somebody who was more on a deep emotional level that I could have connected with. I wish I had had that. I wish, um, I wish I had had somebody who it wasn't just I looked up to and wanted to be like, but I wish I had somebody that I felt more comfortable opening up to. And that can be very tricky. But like I said, sometimes the more that we open up to others, maybe the more that's, one of those men in my life could have opened up more on a deeper level to me.
Mhm.
Maybe I would have connected in a deeper way and, gone about a different path. And yeah, again, I'm not blaming. I had good people in my life. There were so many opportunities for me to choose differently, and I wish I had. But,
Mhm.
you know,
Yeah. But do you think that you have come to a place where you forgive yourself?
yeah, self-forgiveness is definitely it's harder than forgiving others, right? Because I think that we're dealing with our thoughts in our head all day, every day, and it's easier to forgive other people. Whereas, yeah, I come to a point many times throughout the years where I'm like, okay, I understand forgiving myself is like forgiving somebody else. It's not saying what I did, I'm not trying to justify or say it wasn't a horrible thing. No, I can say what I did was horrible, that I should be held accountable, and that, you know, I've caused damage that I'll never understand to so many other people. But that doesn't mean I have to be angry with myself. That
Mhm.
doesn't mean that I have to keep myself down at a low place. No, I can rise up and have a good life, that I deserve that. And yeah, sometimes I tell myself that, and sometimes I don't. Sometimes I still struggle with that, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, I believe that you deserve to be forgiven. I forgive you for what you did. And I believe that people make mistakes, really bad mistakes, but I believe that they can come back from them. I believe they can learn from them. I believe that we're all here to learn from difficulty, adversity, trauma in our lives, even mistakes, even bad mistakes. and use what we've learned to help other people. And I see you doing that. And, you know, that's a way of healing for yourself. And I think you continue to work on forgiveness. Sometimes, you know, we teach forgiveness as a choice. It's a choice that you make, and then it becomes a process. And it's one that you have to continue, and maybe for the rest of your life. But it's the only way to set yourself free from anger and pain and blame for yourself or for other people. I still work on forgiveness for myself for things. And I still work on forgiveness for other people as well. Yeah. It's a process, and that's okay. And I'm glad that you're on that journey. I think it's really important. And I really appreciate you being here today, sharing the wisdom that you have from your experience, sharing your pain, being honest with us, and adding value in helping us be part of the solution. And I do look forward to working with you going forward. Hey, oh,
it's all part of us. We can all choose love. It'll lift you up if you let it in. Let the